We will call to order the meeting of the Dickinson Planning and Zoning Commission of June 21st, 2017. Our first order of business is to look at the agenda. Does anybody have any additions or changes to make to the agenda? Anything from staff?
Mr. Chairman, on item 3 under discussion, I'm going to add some vacant lot information I didn't add on there that will just, you've got that in your packet already. And also, I'm going to fill you in on Cook's Fifth zoning. I have a handout I'll pass down, that something that's come up in the last couple weeks that we think we have a resolution to. So it'll be Cook's Fifth zoning and vacant lot information. We'll just tie it in with the building development stuff.
And these are both discussion items? There won't be...
They are,
yeah.
yes.
Okay. Anything else? Not, we should have a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a second?
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. We have minutes from the last meeting. Do we have any corrections or additions to the minutes? If there are none, I'll have a motion to approve.
Motion to approve minutes of last meeting.
And a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, same sign. The minutes are approved. With that, we'll move to the action agenda. We have an item today to look at a final plat for the proposed Eagles Point subdivision. Mr. Hadley, you're going to introduce that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this is a final plat. It's one of our preliminary final plat reviews that we feel we can do adequate review on one meeting through the Planning and Zoning Commission. It's a 3-lot subdivision, called Eagles Point subdivision, 90.5 acre parcel, splitting it into 3 lots, the smallest of which is 12.5 acres in size. And I believe the applicant's representative is here, and they can present any comments they might have to staff review or anything further.
Good morning.
Chris Robinson with Highlands Engineering. Like Mr. Hadley said, it's a 3-lot subdivision, kind of northwest of Dickinson there, just off the bypass. I believe Mr. Kuba has some interest in Lot 1 of this subdivision for housing for house. I believe that's it.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners?
Mr. Chairman, you do have a couple of additional items there. That there's a letter in opposition to it based on the fact of not having more residential use out there. I believe that particular person that has a concern, they were citing 7 houses. Obviously, there won't be 7 houses. There's 1 house out there right now. There'll be 2, and there's no intent to do anything else on the other 40-acre parcel, I believe, at this time. So,
Right.
This is really a cleanup for the 2 larger parcels and the creation of a 12.5-acre single lot.
Okay. And I did notice that letter that was submitted, that party is under the impression that there are going to be 7 homes out there, and there is no plan for that, at least for the time being.
No.
Okay, any other questions? Sure.
Which lot was Mr. Kuba interested
He essentially owns all of it right now, but his house is on Lot 3.
Okay.
He has interest in Lot 1.
And Lot 3 is there's current residence on Lot 3,
Yes.
correct? Mr. Hadley, maybe you want to summarize, you and I talked yesterday about the zoning. The 12-acre lot would have to be zoned at some point, would it not?
Well, it is zoned, and the residential use is allowed on a greater than 5-acre piece, as long as we're not creating a typical residential R1 rural residential 1-acre lot type subdivision. At this point, until this moves forward, it might be better to look at the zoning. If this changes, if there's more infrastructure there, at some point in time, we can look at a different zoning designation.
And you're having to keep reminding me, and I thank you for that, but the residential usage in the ag zoning is allowed with this acreage, is what you're
Yes,
saying?
so we allow
Yeah.
5-acre parcels, yes.
Okay, anything else? Thank you, Mr. Robinson. This is a public hearing, so we will open the public hearing and ask anybody who is here today who has questions or comments on this proposed subdivision to please step forward. Just state your name and we can try to answer your questions, take your comments. Anybody, any comments on this subdivision? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing. Anything else from commissioners?
I just wanted to add that the other landowner, Mr. Rush, always called me Bruce against the two also. I had a phone call from him.
Okay. Was that party also under the impression that there were more residences?
He just said it was to be developed as residential areas. He didn't say the exact amount of lots on it.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well, somehow there must be some misconception about that, it appears. Anything else? If not, we'll look for a motion one way or the other.
I would make the motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve the final plat of the Eagles Point subdivision. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, motion carries. That is the only action item that we have today, so we will move into the work session. Looks like our first item there is the Renaissance Zone. And Mr. Josephson, you're going to update us. Looks like you're not prepared, Mr. Josephson.
No, I just need to turn the mic on. Good morning, Commissioners. Steve Josephson, County Planner. Just wanted to brief update on the Renaissance Zone. There was a public meeting that was held here last Wednesday. We had, maybe about a dozen people were here. Based upon the discussion from that, from that week, or from that meeting, staff was going to go forward with the Renaissance Zone changes as based upon the map that you see in front of you. We did have one person who came in who had a piece of property that wasn't in this area but in the general vicinity, who was interested in using possibly using this for their house. He was going to go talk to other property owners on the block and see if there was any additional interest. I don't know if he's gotten back to Mr. Hadley yet about that, and Mr. Hadley is shaking his head no. What would happen after this is, after that public meeting is staff is going to go forward creating a new inventory. We will go forward with finding properties on the lots and designating them as potential redevelopment projects, using the criteria using criteria of walkability, and also is it in need of any updates in terms of, is it blighted? Is there any potential for development? Is it in an older section? There's a series of criteria that staff will use, and in my discussions with staff at Department of Commerce, they're fairly generous in terms of what the cities want to designate as potential projects. So once we get a draft of that done, we'll do a workshop in front of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then come forward in public hearing, public hearing for the expansion and change of the Renaissance Zone. I know Mr. Hadley had written down some comments, and just wanted to see if he wanted to add anything else to share with the commission on our public meeting from last week.
If I could, before we do that, you mentioned that there was a party outside the area that was interested.
It was about 2 blocks.
Can
It was
tell
about
us
2
where-
blocks to the north of it. It was west, it was on that area that West Villard area, and it was about 2 blocks to the north. I believe the property is zoned, I believe that block is all zoned residential. Mr. Hadley can address whether or not that, that property owner has been back in touch.
Yeah, thank you, Stephen. He has not. He was told that basically he was going to go talk to a few of his neighbors, see if there was some interest, because he thought there might be, and then get back to us. And we told him that our timeline is to basically try to bring this to you at least by August for discussion. So we'll wait and hear from that. Like some of the comments that were made, the historic district, to use it and incorporate it. A facade program, which I know the city administrator had suggested before, and we said that we would look into that as well. So, wasn't a lot. We had 10 people show up, I think, Stephen? I think there was 10 there. So there was some interest. There was some folks that attended that didn't have a lot of interest in the Renaissance Zone. But they were just there to see what was going on, basically, see what the changes were.
One thing I did want to note is among the people who attended, we had Ryan Gillick from Stark Development. He came to the meeting, and also we had Bob Furman, our museum director, was also there, especially to address if there were any issues about historic structures. So it was a plus to have both of them at that meeting, and a plus that they've both taken an interest in this project.
Well, it sounds like the process moving forward is a good process. You're getting the input you want and all. Personally, I still have a question about, an interest in looking at extending along Villard. Sure open to the pros and cons of that, and maybe you're hearing otherwise, but I guess as we go forward with
Commissioner Jackson, Chairman Jackson, the question becomes, can we find projects, buildings on those blocks that look like they're potential projects? Are they older buildings? Are they ones that show any sort of wear and tear or blight and whatever? And we have considered looking at moving further west on Villard, but the further west you go, the better shape the buildings, the buildings are in. The object of the program is to concentrate on those areas where given the tax, incentives, it would give buildings in need of development, an opportunity to do so. But yeah, we've driven up and down that portion of West Villard. We've gone all the way out to States, and the closer you get to States, the better shape the properties are in, which makes them less. It makes them less.
Yeah, understand what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Mr. Chairman, I guess my only concern as we go west, and maybe somebody from buildings could answer this. I recently saw that between to the east of Frankie's, that old motel there, it looks like it's vacated. Has that property been, something happened to it that all the residents moved out of there? They were kind of using it as an ad hoc apartment complex, and not so much as a motel anymore. So maybe Mr. Thorpe can answer that question. If we're gonna have another empty lot, much like the old other hotel across from Paragon there beside Rummels.
Actually, we've just heard that he's planning on tearing it down. That's all we've heard. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Because that'll be another one of those open areas that we have down, along Villard.
Okay, any other comments for our planners?
I think, Mr. Chairman, what we're looking for is, if you wouldn't mind, before we have the workshop with you, everybody look at that area specifically, drive down Villard, drive down those couple blocks, drive up to the DSU campus, and, we want some information. This is just our draft of where things could go. The one idea would be, we can have an island. That block 25 through block 21 was an area that was specified as a area to promote along DSU. The block 26 through 32 may be areas that we might be able to shift some of those areas, if you don't think those are as advantageous for us, and put them along Villard if that's what you like to do. So anyway, we'd encourage you to look through those areas and just see what you think personally, and then we can just have a good dialogue on where we go from there.
Sure.
Yeah, the only comment, the old cheese factory or cheese plant, I'd like to see that block somehow find a way in there. That's a building that could use redevelopment. It's a large structure. I don't know if it, other than that, I don't know. West Villard is pretty, newer buildings or rebuilt buildings, but.
Mr. Chairman, at our Badlands Board of Realtor meeting and business partners, we had quite a long discussion. One of the realtors brought up that it changed taxes in Fargo, but Mr. Hirschfield and I kind of explained to him that it's just the corridor, improving the corridor look of our city, and also that there's only been like 5 requests for the Renaissance tax break so far that I'm aware of, and that's been a long time.
There've been, in the history of the Renaissance Zone, there's been about 10, and there's been about 12, and 8 projects have been, actually 9 projects have been completed. Most of those are in the downtown core area, and with the exception of one, they've been commercial, they've been commercial properties. So it's been used a little bit more than, Commissioner Dukart. It's been used a little bit more than that.
There's a dollar amount, though, that they have to invest before they get a tax break, right?
That's right, yes. Yeah, so if it's a commercial piece of property, then the amount of improvements they need to do has to equal or exceed 50% of the true value, the assessed value of that piece of that property.
And I think the idea, and I agree with what you're saying, is there's some areas that haven't been utilized or haven't been taken advantage of at all. So I think that's the idea here, is we're trying to put it in areas where we might spur people to actually take advantage of this program that are different than where we've had them in before, besides the downtown core. We want to keep it there, but please let us
Okay.
know different areas you'd like to include.
Okay, we'll look forward to that workshop and public hearing. You have a lot split topic you want to talk about, Mr. Hadley?
Yeah, I think Mr. Kubis is going to jump in and talk about this as well. We obviously do administrative lot splits in our process in the city. We had one that came through the process, and on the top of it, it actually got recorded as a replat. And we just wanted to let you guys know, it is in your packet there. There's a small copy of it for Meadow Hills 4th. It's called a replat. And we just didn't want confusion from the Planning Commission or the public, not realizing that this didn't go through a public process. So a replat would typically come through you and go through the City Commission for approval. This did not. It was actually a lot split that was administratively signed off by Craig and I, and we just kind of wanted to let you know that that was out there just in case that came up. Craig, I don't know if there's anything else.
Not a whole lot, nothing terribly unique about it, other than it's completely built on property, and so there were some some research that needed to go into this lot split, and they do meet all the setback requirements. The jog in the middle goes around a commons building. They've granted each other's lots. If the ownership does split, they've granted each other's lots ingress and egress, and use of the commons building, use of all the parking spaces, so there's no issues with handicap parking, being all on one lot versus the other, so. Administratively, there was a little more work that needed to be done looking into this, but in reality, it was just a lot split, so. That they called a replat. I don't think the name of it changes really what it was, just splitting it into 2 lots, so.
And I think we checked with Attorney Kripe that we don't really have any issues with it being called that. I don't want to talk for her, but I don't think we have any issues that was done that way, so. This is on the corner of 34th and State. It's an apartment complex that they were either looking to sell our lot, a portion of it, with some buildings and turn it into condos maybe or something. So I think that's what their intent was.
You know, I think things like this are fine. I have no problem from a practical standpoint what's happening here. I do question something like this passing muster with a tough title opinion on this, but if Ms. Kripe is comfortable with it, I guess we should be too. Is that it with that?
It is, sir, yes. Unless you have any other questions.
Well, go ahead, Mr. Hadley. Your next item.
In your packet, you have start with the building permit, building development information. And that was pulled off. I think it was emailed to you by Brandy as well after the last meeting, but we wanted to give you a hard copy of that. Obviously, I'm not in tune and up to date with all the information there. If there's any information there that you have any questions on or whatever, Leonard's here, so he can definitely answer any questions if there was anything on there. It was just information, I think, that was asked that, we find out how we're doing. I think we're beyond where we were last year for the entire year, I think, at this point. So things have picked up, and I know that as he's coming up here, that there's been a number of home builders that have actually called me and asked where some vacant lots are. So we'll get into that discussion a little later, but thanks, Jim.
Yeah, you bet. Year to date, actually, single-family structures were at 27, where last year it was 20 for the whole year. So, and we're working on some public structures, 3 or 4 of them, to get them through. And then there's a church too that we're going to be working on. So it's picking up.
Yeah, I wouldn't have any questions on this. I think it's good information for us to have. I hope we keep being fed the information regularly. Good. Anybody any questions on this information? Go ahead, Mr. Hadley.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The next one is vacant lots. In their packet, you'll have a map, 11 by 17 map that has a fair amount of yellow on it. Kind of a rundown. Daryl from engineering, our GIS guy, ran our vacant lots throughout the entire city, and commercial 315, residential 1365. Now that 1365 includes small little lots that are in existing completely developed subdivisions. They may not even be developable at this point. So it's hard to pick some of those out when we're doing vacant lots. But as you can see, there's a number of vacant lots, and that's my comment on the building prior to this, the building activity. There's a number of builders that have purchased lots that in the last couple months that are planning to build a couple handfuls of homes in some of these yellow areas. And I think our goal, I mean, as we can still look at some small developments as far as infill, I agree with Mr. Jackson. We've talked about this a number of times, that we really need to fill in these yellow areas with single-family homes or multifamily. There's some multifamily in there too. But single-family is predominantly the highest vacant lot. So this, again, was information that you kind of asked for. I think it's the best information we can give you at this point. Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
I don't think it is. I think it's a great start, but I think, you know, maybe I'm more interested in this than everybody else, but I'd like to see it broken down by subdivision. I don't think we can put Diamond Acres in the same category as Northridge, as Meadow Hills, you know, some of the other fully developed properties. You know, I know we want to encourage the infill. We can't control that. We don't, you know. But I think we want this so that if there is a brand new subdivision that comes in, we can weigh this information as we're looking at that subdivision. Some of this is probably going to take somebody getting in the car for a half a day and really getting into the detail. Country Oaks, I don't know how many lots are left, but something we should be considering as we move forward. So I think this is a good start, but I'd like to see it fleshed out more than it is. I see the Shenago property, for instance. I don't know how that got tallied in this. Is it one lot, or did somebody assume so many lots per acre? I don't know what that is.
Well, I think it's based on the subdivision. So when Daryl
There is no
pulls it out.
subdivision, though.
Okay, so it would be based on if it's just a vacant piece of ground. If it's not platted, then it wouldn't be considered a lot.
Okay, I'd like to know that, though. So
Okay.
when I look at 1365, the way we did it before, we did make an assumption of 3 lots per acre, or whatever the number was. And I think in some cases, perhaps we should do that. But I'd just like to know when I see that Shenago thing out there, because I don't think that's very close to development, and it'll be difficult to develop.
But that one plot is 99 acres, so that has not been plotted. It's still agricultural
Right.
that we're showing here.
And then along 21st, that Woodhaven's not even on there.
Yeah.
That's approved.
Which one?
Woodhaven. That's platted and approved. It's a 25-acre parcel.
Hmm.
You know, it is going to take a
Going
little
on
bit of,
Side going over to Sunland Cove.
it is going to take a little bit of work to do this, but I think it's worthwhile. And break it down by major subdivision. And
We will still keep plugging away.
I know Sundance Copes, there's a lot of homes going up out there.
Mhm.
We're selling them. There's probably 4 or 5 builders, right, Jason?
I see, again, for example, I see what I refer to as the Hulsing property down on the south side. I don't remember where that was left. I think we had a preliminary plat approval or something that probably isn't valid anymore. But again, I don't know how that's being viewed with 1365.
Mhm.
Are we counting all those lots? Or is it just one? We need to know more.
If they weren't lots that were recognized in our system right now, then they weren't counted. At this point. Alrighty.
Anybody else, any comments? And you had something in Cook's Fifth, Mr. Hadley?
Yes, I do. I'm going to pass this down. Daryl just created this yesterday late. I just printed it out. It was just something I want you to be aware of. Cook's Fifth, the first page is what's there. The second page is what we are proposing to change it to, which I believe is what the intent was when the zone changes were done. somehow our zoning map is incorrect as it exists on our website and our use right now. And contacted Mr. Cook and worked with him on this. He's in agreement with the second page, as far as I know, at this point, to move forward. And what we'll do is the city will advertise a zone change for Cook's Fifth, and we will rezone those lots appropriately as for the second page of that. Depending on when I get feedback from Mr. Cook, because I want to make sure he's on board with what we're proposing to change, will depend on what meeting I put it on. I'm shooting for August. It's not going to be done by July, for the July meeting, so for August, just a FYI that this will be coming up. And we don't really know how it happened. You know, basically the ordinance that we have in place, the map that we have online fits our ordinance and the legal descriptions on it, but it doesn't match what everybody remembers that was done. So it's going to be a cleanup issue. I don't foresee any problems with it, and like I said, I'll have Mr. Cook's concurrence long before we advertise it and move forward.
In writing.
Yes, in writing.
Mr. Hadley, the public area, is that the, that's basically the pond there, right?
Our storm drain, our storm
The storm pond.
system, yep.
Anybody, any questions or comments on that? Anything else, Mr. Hadley?
I don't believe so, sir.
Chairman Jackson, could I go back to this for 1 second? I
Sure.
apologize for this, but is this by chance, is it accessible online where it could be an interactive thing where people could go and see that and zoom in? And is that possible to do? I'm sure it's possible, but.
I think it's possible. It's not there yet, no, but it is possible.
I would think that'd be a great idea for developers and everybody else where they could go and look and zoom in and say, hey, here's some vacant lots and here's some opportunity.
I can ask Daryl to put it on our page, and maybe Craig can, I don't know, if you want to jump in, and Craig can ask him to do it.
Commissioner Karski, I don't know how interactive we can make it, but we could keep it fairly up to date. As long as we know, as soon as the building permit comes in, we'd update the map that this is no longer vacant. So it wouldn't necessarily be interactive, but fairly real time.
Interactive, I basically mean, can you zoom in on it and take a look a little closer? That'd be nice.
Sure.
Well, that's a good idea. I mean, it's a good idea. It's just something that we'd have to follow up with. Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? Anybody from the public have anything they'd like to bring before this board? Sure, come on forward.
Morning, everybody. I'm Andy Murnock. I'm with Piper's Auction Realty out of Bowman. I talked to Mr. Hadley yesterday regarding the coming in today. We have a project on your agenda for next month, and I won't be able to have a representative here to discuss it. Last month, we received a variance to submit a plat for a 3-acre property out by, is it exit 56? Does that sound right? Out by the new exit west of town. For us to submit a plat for a 3-acre property versus a 5-acre plat for the, used to be a required minimum 5 acres, and we got a variance for a 3-acre plat. That'll be submitted for you guys next month after the notification period's been sent out. And I just was here to answer any questions if you guys had any as to potentially why we were requesting it. It's a long-standing residential property out in the, out next to interstate, I guess. So.
Wait, can you tell us a little bit more about where the location is? Which quadrant of the interchange?
It would be east of the interchange, about almost a half mile next to the section line. That'd be section 2, township 139, range 97. Bill and
So south of the interstate?
south of the interstate. It's Bill and Colette Cluin's house that was out there. They sold it a number of years ago on a contract for deed, and now we're just going through the title work to transfer ownership. So I think it's been under contract for about 5 years not here to take up a lot of you guys' time this morning, but we do have some conflicts of interest here next month for the meeting, and Mr. Hadley was kind enough to let me come in and visit with you guys about it this morning, so.
Anybody have any questions?
Yes, is that the one off of Old Highway 10 on the way to Maryville?
No.
That property?
Nope, it's on the north side of the creek, where Bill's got his house and his barns, and up on top of that hill, it's been there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's got the red barn up on top of the hill. He sold the house and the 3 acres to the Monroe family. So,
And our board granted the variance?
the Board of Adjustments.
Board of Adjustments granted the variance to it?
Yes, sir. Yep. Allowed us to go from a 5-acre minimum requirement to a 3-acre. KLJ has submitted the 3-acre drawing, 3-acre site plan, and it'll be accompanied with an aerial map as well to further clarify it, I guess. And I just want to make sure that we weren't missing any other information that I could gather over the next month, so.
It's good that you came in.
Okay, thank you guys.
Anything else? Not, look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We are adjourned, and with that, we'll